Hello. Day 37. Roll up. All right. Day 37, I think. Day 37, 100 days to 1,000 subscribers. I'm going to eventually, probably a day like 59, make a banner and do some shit. But, oh well. As of right now, it just go by word of mouth. So it's day 37. Back with the beans and greens. Man, I've been smoking on some really good friggin' herbs. I wish I took a picture, but I'm like down to like one nug, and I didn't take a picture. I'm kind of hitting myself about it because this is really, 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 really would love to put that up as something. But I'm gonna start taking every time I start getting a good bag. I'm gonna start taking pictures and just uploading it, and because man, it was nice, hard, dense buds, and you break off a little crumb, and it could just man, oh man, it was really good. I just said I got like one nug left, so. But anyway, of course, Nescafe coffee. You know, if I ever get some subscribers, man, I'd love to do like a sponsorship with Nescafe. Love the coffee, but either way, still drinking it. Man, a lot of shit going on. I got a few different things I want to talk about. A few different topics. Before I was doing it 5 days a week, so I would split a topic of a day. But I think I'm just gonna keep it Saturday being, and well, now Sunday, but keep it that. Put all the topics in one show, as opposed to splitting it up. I mean, there's a bunch of news, you could go over, but I don't know. Every other like podcast and channels. I mean, there isn't really too many stories. I mean, the biggest one, obviously, not the biggest. I mean, the biggest socially is the the P Diddy stuff. Ugh. I ain't gonna go into it too much. I don't want to give the same perspectives as everybody else. I just have one. Okay, so we see the trial and we see, they got the pictures, the sketches of Cassie's, and she's on stand and she's pregnant and no cool, right? And she's telling all these mad stories, all the like freaky shit they did, which, I thought he was there for a crime. Okay, so, I mean, the freak stuff, but where's the criminality in it? See, this is a lot of sensation more than actual. I mean, I guess they'll eventually get to that, and the sensation is what brings clicks, but. Where's the criminal stuff? But my whole thought. Okay, so she's talking about all this stuff that happened, and you the husband. They even showed that he was FaceTiming her and shit. I just saw that a little while ago, and I don't mean FaceTiming her now. Like he probably is, but I'm talking about FaceTiming her while she was getting down. Like, did he know she did all this shit? You know what I'm saying? And you sitting there listening to it, like, if he didn't know the depth of the depravity, and you said listening to it, it's like, it did what? Really? It did what? Really? You got glazed up? Word? They put it in that hole? Like, whoa, wait a minute, what? And you got to sort of think back. It's like, you thinking to yourself like, yo, she did all this. I mean, you listening to all the things that she's been involved with and you've done to her, And I don't know. I mean, I guess he knew ahead of time because if he's FaceTiming her, in the confines of a relationship too, I guess there is some sort of disclosure about past and stuff like that. And of course, it's the past, but like, yo, I'm looking at the shit like, I'm hearing all the stuff, and then I'm thinking it back to, me getting down with you, and it's like, you was like, we doing, and you was, and I mean, did it? And so like, just imagine she didn't tell her how far it went, and he's like, oh, really? All over you? Oh, you had to put it on him? Oh, you did this with this person? Oh, and that person? Oh, and maybe he's not visually showing it, but deep down inside, he's just dying a little bit more every time he hears. And he's in it for life now. It's not that he should, run away, but I find it hard to believe. Well, maybe not. If you knew this stuff ahead of time, like the full depths of it, do you get involved that much? I mean, that's the only thing I'm sorry that I can laugh at. Maybe my thinking is warped, but and then has there been some freaky things in his mind that he was like, okay, I love doing this freaky stuff. It's freaky, I have my woman. Let me attempt it and approach it, and she ain't with it. And then you're like listening to all the stuff that was going down. On one hand, you can take the view of like she did all this freaky shit, and maybe now she doesn't want to do it. But I guarantee you, any freaky shit that he'd want to do is probably nothing compared to what has already been done. So how do you approach that? And then, you finding out, it's like, yo, all I wanted was, and you couldn't do that, but, and I get it, rich and famous and powerful and basically has his career and your life in his hand. So of course you're gonna do these things. But we married. And I ain't asking you to do all of that. So then can you get off with saying, you did all this stuff, but you could do, what I'm saying? Like I don't know. I mean, there's so many things going on, so many areas I'm not going to touch on. This one I only want to touch on because it's just the first thing kind of came to mind, as far as, I'm sorry, I kind of get sort of a sick chuckle out of the fact that, he's sitting back thinking and hearing all this stuff that's going down. And it's like, I swear I would die inside a little bit every time I hear more stuff going on. Like, I know me personally, not that anyone would want to, but I know I certainly couldn't date a porno star. I couldn't do it. And not that I would treat a person, somebody that does that kind of profession, disrespectfully or anything in that regard. Just people, I'm not gonna, but a lot of them with too many dicks. And then plus, definitely ain't gonna measure up to some of these guys. So it's just the whole, and ahead of time, you know what I mean? So it's like, if you get into it, you got visual evidence. You can go back and look. And sometimes maybe some people was like, oh, really? You did that? And some guys is with it. So, I don't know. That's just weird observation. I just been kind of like wanting to joke with somebody about that because, there's a lot of that stuff. There's no way she told her about the glazing, and then it's basically what was that bukkake, really, sort of in a way. The little glazing incident they mentioned where, you know, she would get glazed up and then basically transferred on to Mr. Diddy so that he can enjoy the glazing. It's like two chicks, they one take one and then you know what I mean, you pass it, one spit, you know what I mean. You pass it along. Wild. That's some wild stuff. All right, in other news, because just switcheroo, because yeah, that was a little stupidity. So last podcast I did, I was trying to do one of my laughing with ghost segments, and the clip that I was playing was messing up, so it really didn't get the full effect of the clip that I was playing. So I found another one, and it's crazy because the clip I'm gonna play is from, it's a show called Opie Radio. It's an old radio show, and this is where I got the idea or the premise for the segment Laughing with Ghosts, because this particular radio host Opie, throughout the course of his radio career, we can hear it because it's on YouTube. He's been around different comics and stuff, and a lot of funny comics, a lot of personalities, and a lot of them have passed away. And one being that I played early podcasts I played a lot, and I'll play a little bit more in the future, was Patrice O'Neal. He has like a whole playlist of appearances that he had on when it was Opie and Anthony, and you could just go back and just re-listen to it, because it's either stuff that you missed or just stuff that you want to hear again because it was funny. You know what I mean? But these are a lot of these are comedians, in this case, is personality. So what happened? The show switched. They switched up basically, and it was just Opie himself. And he had to find other hosts to go along because the show split up from his other hosts. And he was trying. There was 3 that he did a lot of shows with, and I guess they were meant to be the main hosts. One being Vic Henley, Sherrod Small. Is it Small? I think so. Sherrod. And then the other one being personality Carl Ruiz. 2 comedians and, the TV personality. Now, since, the show is no longer on the radio, it's actually I think it was Sirius Radio. But the show had been canceled. But since then, 2 of those guys have passed on. Mr. Carl Ruiz and Carl Henley. I mean, Vic Henley, Carl Henley. But if you listen to this stuff, the segments just fun. You listening to radio, especially talk radio. You sometimes, the shows back in the day, they were fun to listen to, but they weren't always. Didn't always sort of really wasn't completely my style. I have to sort of. I don't know. Just the best way to put it is just it wasn't like something that I fit in with. I just have to sort of listen to as an outside observer, and certain things I didn't agree with that was said, this, that, and the other. Now this version of the radio show, it was more my lane, but it was fun. It was fun stuff to listen to, and it's just that the thing is, this one person throughout the course of his radio show has been in contact with so many people, and these people have passed on. So even think about it, one of the last interviews with damn, why did I forget his name? It's one of my favorite singers. I don't know why I'm drawing a blank. Chris Cornell. Chris Cornell. One of the last interviews where Chris Cornell was alive was with this guy. And it was Chris Cornell and Patrice O'Neal. They were on the show the same day. I mean, that's some off the wall. That's some off the wall, just like almost. What happened? I got my lighter. I think mom has yours. People looking for lighters. Only I'm smoking herbs. They smoking cigarettes. I don't even want to give them a lighter. Screw their cigarettes. Anyway, so I mean, you have both Chris Cornell and Patrice O'Neal in this one episode. It's like, wow. Well, okay, so it was I think Chris Cornell didn't pass at that time. It was Patrice that passed, but it was just the fact that they were able to go back and, here it is. You have both of them. So, Greg Giraldo was probably one of the last interviews with Greg Giraldo before he passed. Opie and Anthony radio show. There was a few others. There really was. There was a few others. And if anybody doesn't remember Greg Giraldo, go back and look at the roast. He'd be the one comedian that just, it's Comedy Central roast. He was the comedian that just ripped everybody. He ripped ruthlessly into if he was, but if he was more widely known, I think and now that I think about it, I'm probably gonna have to. That's gonna be the next segment is Greg Giraldo, because, oh man. Anyway, yeah, I definitely gonna have to put Greg Giraldo in next segment. But so fast forward to 2017, there was no longer Opie and Anthony, it was Opie. So like I said before, he has these other hosts coming through, and there was some controversy that year because of some infighting at the show and at this company, and there was a lot that was said on the radio, so I wasn't like part of the drama or anything like that. You could hear the drama being said, in the show, but through that you have these different episodes, and I mean, this maybe for not everybody, because a lot of the talk was just of, because Carl was a Food Network personality, a lot of food talk, a lot of political talk, because they were talking. Trump was. This is during Trump's first term, so there was a lot of political talk. A lot of different things, and just just straight up ball busting. Not to the level that was going on, when it was Opie and Anthony, which I kind of loved that too. So that definitely was good, but after a while, it's just. So that's going to be the segment. I know going long with it for that segment, but now the last thing is just going to talk about a little bit of it's a couple of things. So the other thing too now is talking about movies that have a sort of a dystopic feeling or dystopic sense to it, and now of course these are movies that were created way back 70s, 80s, 90s, 60s, 50s, sometimes 50s. Do we even go back that far? Yeah, they were making those kind of movies. I don't know when was. Yeah. Anyway, these are movies that, in my opinion, are sort of like a blueprint of all the things that are going on now, and it's a sort of conspiratorial type of vibe to it. Now, the movie I want to discuss. Star Wars. Of course, I'll go into that topic in a little bit, and then the last topic, of course, is going to be just some theories I have, specifically talking about this whole idea of modern times, modernity, or if that's even a term, or just modern. And there's a whole presentation I have. Well, so it's sort of not a whole big presentation, but just sort of some things behind that. So I think what I want to start with is going into that. We'll go with heavy to light. So I'll save the laughing with ghosts for later, for the last part. But so the first thing is wet the whistle. With that term whistle, wet the whistle. So this whole idea that we're living in modern times, and we're going heading into the future, and you hear this a lot too, especially from like the whole feminist perspective. We're modern people, modern women, and just modern times. We're not going to live like how our foremothers lived, and the slavery from then, and just that and the other. And everything is talking about going into the future, and advanced technologies and advanced societies. And I kind of have a bit of a problem with that, because I don't necessarily believe me. And this, again, everything I'm saying just is me, my perspective. I don't think that's the case. I don't think we're living in modern times. I think we're living in a regression of time, and just the whole idea of moving forward is just only imprinted in our mind. But there's two levels to that, because on one hand, you can feel the regression. You can feel things are going backwards if you understood or have lived in times that things were going in a different direction, right? So every year we count down the days, we count down the minutes, we count down the seconds. And then when you're working, especially, let's say, customer service, a lot of times, when you're doing customer service, when they start doing, like, okay, so you do you're on the phones, and you have to meet certain metrics, and they measure these metrics, and then you sit down with your manager when they do reviews, and they tell you, the client pays per second when you're on the phone, so they're watching per second, they're justifying what they're paying you, but based on how many seconds, not just the minutes, not just the hours, but seconds. See what I'm saying? That's that ideology, that whole construct gives you the idea of that you're moving in a forward fashion, because you start early in the morning time, and then you progress in time, and of course, once the day hits night, your mind. So in that way, yes. So we're moving further along in that regard, but in every other metric or every other sort of ideology, it seems sort of a regression, socially, morally, technologically, because you do see, right, that, okay, so we have electric cars now, but they do have the ability to create cars that run on free energy. Free energy is a thing. And it's free energy is the hell of a thing, really. Just the idea that you can create a device that captures energy from just the pure air from out there, the electromagnetic, I don't know why I want to say static, but there's sort of electricity, because of how I believe it's how just we're all connected through, at least think about a human body, right? Every movement you do, every word you speak, in order to be able to do that, there's these electric pulses flowing through your veins in order to send that information, or that the information is sent. In order to do that action, you have to have something to create that. So it's an electric impulse that's going through your veins and things like that. It's a better way to say that, but that's the basic premise or the basic idea. So think about that externally. So the whole idea that you can pull energy from the air, that's of course, revolutionary. But they're saying that we're moving forward technologically. But if that's the case, why aren't we using that technology? So there's a few theories, right? One being that the technology is being withheld, which I certainly I certainly think that is certainly the case for and to a certain extent. They of course, if you get free energy from the air and you create cars, which it's happening right now. There are people that on the low, are creating technologies and creating cars that, they rival the Teslas because they think about it, they do all the stuff that Tesla does, drawing no power from any source fixed. It's all from, for lack of a better term, the ether. So, they're doing that now. So if you're Tesla or hell even any oil company, any electric company, you definitely don't want that kind of technology because it makes their product obsolete, which it's like junkies. If you take the drugs from the junkies, they get antsy, and they start wanting it, and then they start getting violent. So you take the money and the way to make money and the power from these people, chaos, violence. So these technologies are there. Now the other sort of and I do believe that they are suppressing it, but the other thought is too is they haven't found the technology yet, they haven't discovered it yet, or that there's these alien ships that they're getting the technology from. I of course think that's sort of lazy on one hand because it explains it and people just sort of just believe it. They find alien ships and they've been reverse engineering and that's how we get this technology, and then that they're now hoarding some technology. That people can get lazy when it comes to thinking about that as well. But now there's my whole thought, kind of my sort of premise or thought on this is, we're not really living in the modern times. We're living in the regressive times because, of course, there is this technology. There are these structures, which we call pyramids, right? And they're all over the world, not only just on land and in the desert, they're also underwater. You have them in Egypt, you have them in South America, you have it here in North America. They have these structures, and they have all kinds of hidden structures all over the world. They can't explain how any of these structures got where they are because they're in places that doesn't make any sense. And, at least as far as the pyramids go, is they cannot explain how these structures were built. They can explain how these structures were built on the outside as well as they're on the inside. And now they've even come up with, whole structures underground. See, this world at one point was technologically advanced. And through, there's I believe there are many. This is where I get a little even more tinfoil hat here. So I'm trying not to sound stupid and trying to sound like a flat earther, but I just might. Even though I'm not going to admit, I'm just using flat earther as a term. I'm not saying that I am. I'm just saying it almost, my whole thought on it is sort of out there. So you have these advanced societies. They even talk about it. One being Atlantis. Um, there's all this evidence based on these structures that they find deep within, like under the water, deep within caverns and in mountainous regions and like deserts. But there's accounts of these places where these structures where these structures are built, were once thriving societies, and that for whatever reason, there was a lot of times climate was the main reason for these societies. Something climate, because if you look at whether like the Nile River Valley area and the Sahara Desert, was supposed to be at some point, thriving greenlands, and I couldn't imagine that some beings would build these structures in sort of barren deserts. So the historians want us to believe that it was just natural disasters that caused, all of these different things to go away. To like Pompeii is another one of those. Like there was a volcano that erupted, and it could very well could be. But if we look at what's going on today, we understand that these things can be manipulated, right? With these things being weather. So they can, again, I've said this tinfoil hat warning, but they have given the idea that they can create earthquakes. Now, of course, you can sort of take that, this fucking pothead. They're admitting to geoengineering right now with the blocking out the sun as being a way to, using these planes and using planes that have the chemtrails, creating, these artificial clouds blocking the sun. For what reason? I mean, we humans need the sun. I know, especially, we need the sun. The sun is part of what we are. Everything on this earth is part of what we are. So they're letting out drips and drabs of these things that they can do that affect the planet. Affect these areas on an ultimately biblical level. The bombs that they can drop, the things that these bombs can do. The with the atom bomb and now the nuclear bomb, 10,000-pound bombs, electromagnetic bombs, maglev bombs, whatever bombs that they have. These things have a way of affecting not only just the areas that they drop them on, but areas outside of that. And these have long-lasting effects. So I find it hard to believe that these ancient societies were for because okay, so this plane that we live on, it does go through changes, natural changes. And these ancient societies, these people had ways of living within nature, understanding nature in ways that we don't to this day. They were able to, without technology that we can identify, were able to accurately map out the world from here and outside the planet. They were able to accurately map out the world. So we understand that these ancient societies, just based off of just little things like that, have to be made more advanced than we give them credit for. And if they can do things like create these magnificent structures, right? What that we can't create now. What happened to them? You know what I mean? They were able to thrive. And so just all of a sudden, you know, like say with Pompeii, all of a sudden the volcano just exploded, you know, with the Nile Valley and the Sahara Desert. All of a sudden, just, you know, over a period of years, it went from lush green wetlands and you know, very fruitful and things like that to now it's desert. I mean, it sounds like, from my perspective, the same kind of interference, you know, we're having today, where it was sort of a presence that isn't from this plane, but somehow has to destroy, or has, maybe not necessarily on purpose, because you see a lot of things that are going on nowadays, sort of with like, maybe with the jab, you know, that was something that was an experiment. So maybe they didn't intend to have the negative effects that it did, or maybe they did, but either way, it's the same thing. So my kind of thought is, okay, there was some sabotage going on. You know, there was some definite weaponry that created such cataclysmic events of the Sahara Desert being, you know, and just think of what kind of a weapon could be created that would cause that area to become so dry, or what kind of weapon could be created that would cause, again, it was Mount Vesuvius, wasn't it? Some of these stuff I should have, I should have looked up beforehand. But there's a couple of clips I want to play just to give sort of the idea. You have these structures, and with all the great minds that we have today, they can't figure out. Like, it just can't figure it out. It's just the whole idea of how this stuff could happen. So we'll just listen to just a couple of clips. I'm going to claim fair use. Let me bring it up.
At ground level, that's fine. But to move 200-ton blocks of stone 350 feet in the air and to build them into a chamber in the heart of the Great Pyramid, that is another matter. There are a number of ancient Egyptian traditions
Oh, man.
that speak of the priests levitating these large blocks. And this is accompanied by sound. Chanting, music plays a part in the lifting up of the blocks. So I think it's perfectly natural and reasonable to speculate that they may have been using some ability that we do not understand. To say that...
See, so that's so wild, right? And now, but here's the thing that sort of fascinating to me, how they're talking about how, you know, these blocks were able to be levitated with sound. I never really understood how powerful sound is. You know, it's always been something that I've sort of been drawn to, being, you know, a musician, right? You know, it's you know, you understand that sound is more, you know, music is more than just sounds. It's communication. You know, and it's funny because one of the things I'm sort of into a lot lately, it's been for a while, is Lord of the Rings. Right, and they talk about in the beginning, the first parts of it, the Silmarillion, and you talk about how the creator of all of the worlds, Eru, right? That's the name of the god in this tale, and what was important, and how this creator created was through sound, through songs. You know, it was the songs that were sung that created life, created lands, created, you know, the heavens and the earths, created light. And it was one of their sort of angels, Melkor, which later they renamed to Morgoth, he used negative sounds. You know, it was a discord in order to cause chaos, in order to go against that. So, you know, it. I know that's a bit of veer off, but that's sort of give you an example of the power of sound. In this case, it you know, in this case, it's of course it's a story, it's TV, it's movies, but of course I've I've been with my other segment have been sort of trying to dispel the whole notion that, you know, television is just television, entertainment is just entertainment. But, you know, back to this, so it's just so fascinating to think, right, that back then, or was it back then? See what I'm saying? Or was it more? It was in the future, or however you want to think about it. You know, these people that existed at this time were able to do, you know, these miraculous things that we can't recreate now in this modern times. You know, and what was it that destroyed that? What was it that caused these things? I have a hard time believing that it's all natural causes. You see what I'm saying? So now we get back to our time. We know that there are these things out there that at least a lot of us that like to think in those terms, that there are a lot of things that we can't explain that happen, and that there's supposed to be all this technology. And so my thinking is too, it's not even just a matter of the powers that be. It's not only that they're withholding the technology. I just think that a lot of the technology that, you know, a lot of this technology, the so-called advanced technology, the technology that was there, the all of just the knowledge on how to do these things that we can't explain that happened back then. I just think that these people don't know how to understand it. I don't think they understand, you know, what it is they're dealing with. I don't think they understand the implications of what they're dealing with. I don't think they understand the technology. And the other thing too is, I think the people that are in tune with this technology, people that are in tune with this knowledge, are the people that they are, or they have been vigorously going after for years. Let's just say it that way. You know, decades, centuries. Because, you know, it's a young man in Africa who came up with a car that runs on free energy. Hell, there was a older gentleman here in America that came up with the technology to be able to run a car off water. He was disappeared. Well, not even all. He wasn't even disappeared. He just all of a sudden was poisoned, and that was it. You know, and the young man in Africa who came up with the technology to hell, Nikola Tesla. He was another one. He was another one that had that technology, the free energy technology. You know, we know about Tesla now mostly because of the car. You know, and then a lot of us in the tinfoil hat community, we know of HARP. But one of the things that he was working on was free energy. So this whole idea of modernity, I think that's just a blinder. You know, I can go into the social regression and go through the ethical regression, moral regression. I mean, there's all the channels that do that shit. I can not that my morals or my ethics are any better than anybody else's, but even in that regards, I can say honestly, I think there's a regression too, because and not that I'm from like, I mean, I can't really speak on how it was in the 1800s. I can only go far back as the 70s. You know, well, not even. I was a baby, so I can remember as early as maybe 1981. So I can't really speak to, and I was 4, so I can't speak to necessarily knowing, how the morals of society were, or, I can only just sort of think, because based off of what I've seen from television, what I've seen from parents, what I've seen from people around, things I remember, but there seemed to be more of a, I just think that there was more love for life and others' life. I mean, there's always been wars. We know of all of that. I mean, that is what it is, right? But it wasn't like the actual working class people saying to the other working class people, hey, we don't like you. Let's, we're coming over to shoot your shit up. It was situations where there was conflicts between the world leaders, and through circumstances they were able to have working class people go fight their wars, right? People had a sense of duty. That's another thing that seems to be more not then than now. I don't know, maybe not. Because of course I've never been in the military, so I can't say that people don't feel more sense of duty now than they did before. It just seems a little bit different, based off of. But I don't know. I can't necessarily. Because then you think too, right? You have the military, who you can't really question their sense of duty, right? I mean, that's just ridiculous, because it does take, even if you're just doing it for the money, you still obviously know, you're dedicating yourself to something that, is serious, right? And it has greater implications. But then amongst those of us who don't go to the military, do we feel a sense of duty more now than they did back then, as far as being supportive of those that go over the war? So that I think holds a little bit more weight. But then again, I don't even really know. I can only go by what I see on movies and see in TV clips, and it's kind of the same mixed bag, really, right? So, but it just like I said, it just feels like, there was still more of a care for one's other life, to a certain extent. But I don't know, man. I really believe that we're not going forward. We're going backwards. Only the idea of going forward is based off the fact that we have clocks, and these clocks and these calendars show us that we are going forward. But man, spiritually, I don't think. And okay, so we also just to go part of my whole theory in that regards too is, I talk about all of the, like, saying that they're creating harp, and they can create earthquakes, and with harp they can create hurricanes, and all these different super storms and shits like that. But I also think a part of that too is, and this goes back to sort of moral, ethical, spiritual regression, is that there's such a discord. And again, going back to what I was saying about Lord of the Rings, and you have Morgoth or Melkor being the discord in the music of their deity or their god, Eru, causing chaos. So that whole same thing is such a discord amongst the people, in the world, and that also is sort of creating part of creating these natural disasters. Because if you understand that we are an extension of the world, right? We are an extension of this land that we live on. They call it Mother Earth, right? And through Mother Earth, it births all these different things, right? It births, the vegetation, right? We come from, and we go back to that. The animals come from. They go back to that. Everything always goes down to the earth, and we're not. I don't think that we're just connected in the sense that we live on the planet. We pull resources from the planet, but being part of that spiritually. So like with heard this fascinating thing where sort of in New Zealand, the Aborigines, they refer to trees as sister and brother. That's so fascinating because not only one, it connects you to, it connects you to nature. But then, just if you're referring to somebody as a sister or a brother, there's a sense of duty towards that entity that you're referring to because you feel so close to that you call them that. So, now we have these people calling life, calling vegetation, calling trees brother, calling sister. Again, going back to Lord of the Rings. One of the big mysterious things in there were the Ents, talking trees, and the Ent wives. And, the Ent wives, based off of theory, because again, Tolkien didn't suspect. Tolkien didn't write it, but or write it specifically, but based off of theory, so we know based off of Treebeard being one of the Ents that we saw in Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, they lost the Ent wives. They couldn't find the Ent wives. And now based off of the theories and the stories, it was told that the Ent wives that felt the discord, they felt, all the pain, that they basically retreated. And, these were trees, but they moved around, they talked, and at the Ent wives basically retreated, and then out of preservation for themselves and also out of being heartbroken, they turned from those type of trees that would move to the stationary trees now. Now they're just regular trees now. They've given up all their human-like features just to sort of, because they were so heartbroken. And again, because of the discord in the world. So a lot of what we go through as people, just working class, low class, high class, all that discord, is making it easy for them to, one, be able to create these cataclysmic events using technology that, one, it seems like the technology that they were able to figure out was how to destroy, but the technology how to save, of course, we don't want that. But you couple that, with, I believe, the planet and the earth and the trees and the birds and the fish and all the different animals are just sort of disappointed in us as humans. And not because, disappointed and that discord is causing, these different cataclysmic events as a way to protect itself, and these entities not necessarily disappointed because we create homes and, we eat food and we do all these things, we It's basically all these things that the powers that be say that we shouldn't be doing because it's hurting the world. You know, it's not because of that. It's because of the fact that we, you know, we take from the earth, but we don't give back. You know, we kill animals to eat them, but we don't respect them beforehand. And we don't thank them for, you know, the life that they give us. Same thing with the plants. You know, we don't take care of the plants. We throw pesticides on them, force them to grow, you know, at the worst times, and you know, a lot of these plants that we have, a lot of these fruits and vegetables are off season. So think about that. You know, you're a plant and you thrive and you know, you love these certain time, you know, you love these certain seasons, but you know, you're being forced to fruit in climates that aren't respected to your, just what you are, you know, or like you put like another ideas or sort of the thing to sort of back that up is that you put clothes on a dog. Because if you go back to there's another movie, Planet of the Apes, the one with James Franco. Now obviously he's done some shit and he's been canceled, but you know, he was in the movie. But they had that monkey that they adopted, and for some reason, like most people do, you get a wild animal or just a domestic animal, and you want to humanize it and put clothes on it. But as soon as they put him around other apes, the lead ape, first thing he did, walked up to him and said, "Rip the clothes off." It's like, yo, you a monkey, you not one of them, you one of us. And he had to get in line. See, so that's what I'm saying. The world is I definitely disappointed, definitely disappointed in us as humans, because we're not respecting the gifts that it gives us, and we're destroying. So you couple that, yeah, we're not advanced in any way. We're not moving forward. I mean, I heard a fascinating podcast tonight talking about time not being linear. And I'm not going to go into it too much. I don't want to jump on somebody else's premise and then sort of make it my own. But it kind of does, the theory behind that kind of does sort of intersect into what I was saying, in the sense that what he was sort of proposing was the past and the future, you know, it operates at the same time. And when you're when you have an event of deja vu, that's your mind coming into this event that happens in the future, that because of how time actually works, you've already been there. So it's a matter of what comes into view of the mind. So he's saying that we don't flow through time. Time flows through us. So the past has happened, but it's something that has happened and it exists. It doesn't go away. It's just that it's already flown through you. And the future is getting ready to flow through you. And that, you know, it's wild. I'm still sort of, and mine's still sort of spinning. But you think about it, right? If time isn't linear, this whole idea that we're moving forward into a modern time is kind of like, are we? You know, again, supporting that because of the fact that all of these technologies that, I mean, they still can't recreate an actual pyramid. I mean, this let me see if I got other clip. Yeah, same. All right. I was playing the damn thing, but I had the volume turned off. Durr. All right, here we go.
To be honest, I have. How do I think the pyramids were built? To be honest, I have no answer to that question. And anybody who tells you that he or she knows how the pyramids were built are not telling the truth, because we don't know. We don't know. The Great Pyramid contains a number of mysteries. The Great Pyramid, first of all, is very big. The Great Pyramid weighs 6 million tons. We can calculate that from its mass. It weighs 6 million tons. Its footprint is 13 acres.
Damn.
It's more than 750 feet along each side. It's 481 feet tall. How do I think the pyramids were built? To be honest...
See? How do you account for that and then call yourself a modern society if we can't even recreate that? You know, and they always say these unlocking these mysteries. Well, you're fucking killing off the people that have the answers to these mysteries. You're destroying the land. You're destroying the knowledge. You're taking the culture away. You know, there was a whole thing, right, of back in, I think it was World War II, and what they did was they got a bunch of Native American troops because they were good at tracking, and you know they were all of those things that were natural to them. They wanted to utilize those those abilities, and so they brought them into the military and put them through their military process, cut their hair, basically took their whole culture from them in order to acclimate them to the military, not realizing that it was that culture, it was their hair, their whole ideology, their whole culture that connected them to these abilities that they wanted to utilize. So now you have these people who you've pulled out what it is you wanted from them. A simple thing like giving a person a haircut, not realizing that hair is used in a way that you could never understand. I could never understand that, how you would. I mean, I guess sort of. I don't even know. It's like sort of antennas. I mean, to be infantile about it, really, but that that culture, that their ideology, what was them that you took from them was what connected them to those abilities. So now you're over in these lands far, far away, dropping all these bombs and dropping and leaving, irradiating their skies and destroying their lands and dropping uranium bombs with uranium and poisoning their land with uranium and killing the people. People are part of that. Killing and destroying the people that are connected to all of the, not only connected us to the past in the sense, or connecting us to those times, but connecting us to that technology. So much for modernity. Is that the word? Modernity. Anyway, that's my little rant in that regards. But and I've even brought up a couple of movies during that, and so that even goes back to now this next topic. This kind of flows into that. How they. And I have a whole list. I'm not going to go over it now. Eventually, I'll try to do another movie marathon at some point, but even just sort of like I was mentioning before, how we look at movies and music as entertainment when really it's communication, right? It's entertainment, not necessarily something to pass the time, but it's entertaining these thoughts within your mind. Television, right? So you get that whole tell lie vision. You tell a lie through the vision in order to be able to imprint these ideas and values in your mind. And now this is a social norm at that point, right? I mean, you look at it, the news will play something every day, and it'll go across different platforms, and they'll have the same headline for the same whatever the thing is for the day. And they'll have pundits come on and they'll give the same through lines and the same talking points. Maybe they switch it up to where it sounds different, or sometimes they're just lazy and they say the same thing that you heard on the other platform, and then they do it every day, and every day, every day, and now this is it. So the whole idea of going after Muslims and anybody basically like that, right? You've been told for years. I mean, just go all the way back to the 80s and all the movies. Who the main enemy were the Muslims, and now it's just sort of just dumping on them everywhere, and it seems normal. And it seems like because of television and movies and all of the different pundits and different things that's going on, it almost seems like a duty for the world to go after these dastardly Muslims. And it's all a way of playing with the mind. So they put it in movies. They tell you what's going on. I mean, it's fucking diabolical if you think about it, because you think they're using all these different things in order to create social norms, and they're making you pay for it as entertainment. And I can go through the list, but one of the reasons why I picked why I picked Star Wars is one of those movies, and I'm not talking about the originals. The originals are part of it, but we're talking about the second three, the one with Anakin. I call it sort of the Anakin saga, not the Luke saga. Now, the reason why I'm picking this whole, because if you think about it, okay, you have Palpatine, right? He's the senator. And then you have Queen Amidala, right? She's the queen of this world, Naboo. And then you have Palpatine, he's the senator. This planet, this territory, this planet is being attacked, right? And now there's a war going on. And so they have a big thing in the Senate, because there's a galactic Senate, and as with the Senate that we have here, they're basically a bunch of people arguing on what should be done in order to help this war go on, or to help these people fight this war, or if other people should be involved. And it's not only happening in it at some point you realize it's not only happening in this one world, Naboo. It's happening all over the galaxy in different areas, and they're fighting wars with this one faction. You go through and see the introduction of characters, right? So you see through trials and tribulations, they run across, the main characters, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon. They come across Anakin. Now, the actual story of the characters itself is second to my whole premise, because, of course, that's the fun part is seeing them, fight and, raise Anakin and see him go through his different trials and tribulations. But let's focus on the Senate, right? So you have the Senate, and based off of certain things that happen, you see Palpatine sort of in the background, and he's sort of playing this. He's basically playing them. He's like the affected senator whose world is being attacked, and he needs to find a way to be able to, affect change so that they can fight this war. And through manipulation, subtle, underlying manipulation, he rose to even higher power and was given more power in order to fight this war against, I think it was the trade separatists. So now he gains more power, and through it all, you find out that he was the one that was behind the attack on his own world and attacks on all these other worlds. And what he did was, this was when Anakin became Darth Vader. He sent Anakin, now Darth Vader, to go and kill the leaders of this, trade union faction that he had used in order to cause the war, which now enabled him to gain more power, which after that, and because of the fact that there was these terrorist events by this group that he secretly controlled, he was able to use those circumstances in order to create a galactic empire so that they could protect the worlds and stop terrorism. And now you're the one universal power, because now it's a galactic empire and is ruled with a tight rein. Stormtroopers were basically modern cops. They were basically a modern version of the Knights of the whatever kingdom. Just a modern version of that. So the brilliance behind it, there's one power behind the scenes who also is in a place of power, uses his position of power to not only cause the war on his planet, he's using that war as a catapult to even greater power over the whole empire as a whole, and then has a new world or a new empire order. I mean, I don't know. I have a hard time. Again, tinfoil moment. Just my thoughts. I have a hard time believing that, one, this stuff wasn't put in this movie for a reason. And two, that the people that created this movie didn't understand what was going on. I know it's Lucasfilm, and we don't want to. You see George Lucas, and he's like big ass old Ewok sort of type of man, and there's nothing dastardly going on there, and I just think that, as with the Bible, they use these things as tools and as a way to herd society into these situations that will catapult, not only catapult. I don't know why I use that word. I never use that word even describe it, even when I'm talking about catapult. But anyway, just sort of guiding, everybody into this order, this world order. And on one hand, you can sort of discredit the whole idea of that premise based off the fact that, hey, it's in the movie. It's not real. You're not talking about real life. You're talking about Star Wars, asshole. Get out of here. Let me go. Let me drink my expensive coffee and spend way too much money at the grocery store and worry about if I'm gonna have money to pay my rent tomorrow, and why is the gas $6-7 for a gallon? That's real. This whole shit you're talking about that's in the fucking movie, fuck out of here. See, that's the whole idea. Most people are, they're chasing bills, chasing the idea of at least in this country, chasing the idea of the American way, chasing the idea of freedom. In other countries, they're just chasing food, the idea of getting food. So all this stuff is plainly in front of you, and you can see it happening, but it's not what's happening, because what's happening, this was in the movie. What's happening here is totally different. Yeah, this person is this person is the leader of a bad country, and they're attacking the world. No, it wasn't that somebody was behind him, and no. That was in the movie. You saw that in the movie. That was in the movie with Brad Pitt or this actor or that actor. Couldn't be what's going on. So that's the whole idea. And that goes to what my whole premise about the segment is. With all these different movies, you get an idea of what's going on in the world, and you can see the imprint list of the world in these movies. 1984. Horrible movie. Horribly long. Super long-winded. Fascinating premise, and scarier than any fucking horror movie. I mean, you get it's even more. It was, and the weird thing about a movie like 1984, and I'm not going to go into the premise behind it because it's a whole other thing. And I did actually, like, one of the first episodes, so I did actually go over that. But at the time that I first saw it, I like early 2000s or whatever, it wasn't. It was scary as fuck then, because, again, being of that mindset, this was a world view or world that we were going into. And it's even more scarier now to look at the movie, because you can see that this is we're there. We're there's no there there's no sort of like, yeah, this is gonna happen. This may happen in a few years. This is 10 years now the line. This scary premise is 10 years down the line. No, it's now. It's right now. They gave a list of the conflicts that were going to happen before, or these conflicts were going to happen, and they needed to happen in order for this new world to come into to be made actual, to be actualized. And they list these different conflicts. Now, this list, when I first heard it, happened, I heard about this as they were basically starting it out. We're almost at the end. We're almost at the end of this list. We're there. We're in 1984. Obviously, it's not actually 1984, but we're in 1984, and it's all in the movies, man. It's all in the movies. I mean, go back to old Schwarzenegger movies, Running Man. Go back to Stallone movies. I mean, Bruce Willis, all these when you were living in the 80s, all these movies would come out and they were such big fanfare, and it was the race between this actor and this actor, and it was one big idea after another big idea, sort of crazy ideas. And then you fast forward, as you get older, you start seeing this shit. It's like, wasn't this? Two of the scary movies from in the past, besides 1984, one being RoboCop, the other being Judge Dredd. Now, Judge Dredd wasn't like the 80s or whatever, but it was still Stallone. And I'm talking about the Carl Urban one. Well, yeah. No, the Carl Urban one too. Because the Carl Urban version of Judge Dredd was definitely in a dystopic empire or dystopic time frame. The first one with Stallone was meant to be in that sort of time frame too. It was just more of a comical presentation compared to the one with Carl Urban. Yeah. I don't really need to go into why that, but those movies are scary. But it's happening right now. Hell, Terminator. Fucking Terminator. They working on that shit. Terminator, what's the one that Will Smith did? With the robots? They're doing that shit right the fuck now. And you know what happened in the movies. So maybe it doesn't necessarily end as it does in the movies to that extent. Or may not look like it does in the movies. But I mean, it's gonna be fucking something to that extent. It's like, yo, what the fuck? At least you get to you get a vision of the world that's sort of far away from the life that you live. And you could sort of fantasize and say, nah, this is not going to happen. Let me just enjoy it as it is until you get the fucking robot boot on your head. Talking about, let me see your papers or whatever it is. And if you don't comply, squish. No feelings, not that our live human robots have any feelings now. You know, they're able to turn that switch off in people real easy. And that goes back to television, you know, the internet, seeing it every day. You know, seeing this shit every day on TV or some kind of medium, you know what I mean? So maybe it's not necessarily a button that you click off at one time, but it's something that through a series of repetition, you know, you make that part of a person's soul smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller to the point where they no longer have that in them. Compassion and a sense of care for other people. I guess that seems to be real easy to get rid of in people. All right, so I'm gonna take a break. Got to, you know, use the facilities, and then we'll end it on a lighter note. I mean, they got other movies I can go to. The you know, the whole. I think one of the other movies that I want to sort of premises as far as like movies go is this whole idea of The Exorcist, you know, demons, and you know, one of those movies that definitely constitute that. Let me talk about that now. I think I can just bring that up. Yeah, I'll save it. Yeah, I've been pretty heavy this whole time. Heavy tinfoil hat. That's where I can put it. I don't know, but yeah, let me step away for just a second. I'll be right back.
around you. Our masters, wake up! They're all about you. All around you.
All right. That was one of my early attempts at a dubstep beat. Yeah. I think it's good. I don't know if I want to necessarily call it dubstep per se, but it's what it is. So back to the stuff at hand. I was kind of thinking about it. I do want to talk about it. I do want to bring up the other movie. I think the other movie the reason why I want to bring it up is because it doesn't talk about the dystopic side of everything. It goes into the spiritual side of things. And I've mentioned this before, but one of the movie selections or show selections, I may never show it on as far as like doing part of the movie marathon, because it's a series. But the movie that I'm talking about now, I'm definitely going to add on to it. The movie I'm talking about is Constantine, right? And the show that I was mentioning from previous episodes is Exorcist. And it was not the movie The Exorcist, it was an actual series, a TV series, Exorcist. I don't know how I got into it. I did. Don't ask me how. But the premise between, I think it was season 2 of The Exorcist. So the connection between that and the movie Constantine is possession. So in the TV series The Exorcist, you see in like one of the first episodes, all of a sudden all these influential people, they started to be, something came over all of like these demons started possessing all these different influential people. And in Constantine, one of the underlying themes in the movie, which even connects back to They Live, is sort of strange. Well, getting old tinfoil hat, but it wasn't the whole premise of the movie, but one of the supporting underlying themes of the movie was possession of these entities. These entities not only possessing, not necessarily possessing people, but possessing the appearance of being human in order to be able to operate within this plane. And that was the same thing with that TV series, Exorcist. And like I said, the first episode, you start seeing these influential people, especially high up priests, that were starting to be taken over by not the devil, but different demons. And so then you go back. Same thing with They Live, but in They Live it was aliens. But in Constantine and the Exorcist series, it was demons. Which that's a whole other theory in itself. This whole idea of that we have aliens, and I'll go back to that in another moment. I brought it up before, or I think I have, but in Constantine, you have these beings from heaven, from hell, that were representative of the ultimate good, the ultimate evil. And one of the things Constantine said to the Rachel Weisz, who's, I guess you could say she's the protagonist, one of the things that he was mentioning in the conversation were that these people these entities weren't able to have direct effect. They were only supposed to be able to influence. And how could you influence, right? As a person, as an entity, as a being, unless you're in places of power. You manifest into these places of power. So, like in the Exorcist series, like some of the demons possessed bodies of clergy that were like, cardinals and, entities that were next in line. Could be like the Pope. And I don't think they referenced the Pope in Exorcist, but you could definitely see these demons take over the clergy and these clergymen, and they were able to affect these certain events and have these certain events go on. And the same thing in the Constantine, right? So you gotta think, right? Transpose it now. Think of the world as is. You have all of these world leaders themselves aren't necessarily capable, or they're capable, but they don't necessarily have the ability themselves to do these things, such as murder on a large scale, causing famines. If you think about it, right? I go back to the 80s. I remember so much in the 80s, all of these commercials of all these people in Africa that were starving, and they 10 cents a day, and you could feed a child, and you send us 10 cents, we'll send you a postcard with a picture, and we see all this famine and stuff going on in these. This didn't happen by just happenstance. It was people that were okay with the fact that taking all these resources and taking all these the abilities of these people to be able to taking the ability to be able to create ways to feed themselves and house themselves, and just basically create a society where they could live. They took those abilities away from them, and now they're in abject poverty, to the point where you have children who are so emaciated and flies flying around them, and know nothing of anything other than pain and starvation. Somebody put them through that. And what kind of a people, what kind of a person could affect that sort of a lifestyle onto a whole nother type of people? I can't imagine somebody sort of another working class person or lower class or even rich class. And when I say rich class, I'm talking like your millionaires and your ones that a couple $100,000 in the bank. Because truth be told, I mean, you get a couple of million, you're not rich. You just have money. There's a difference. Sounds silly, but being rich and wealthy, them motherfuckers never really talk in terms of necessarily money in the way we talk about it, because we have to count dollars. They create dollars, so that's the difference between a millionaire and somebody who's actually truly wealthy. Making it and creating it's a whole different thing. If you're making it from somebody, you're basically a slave to the people that you're creating it for, or making or that you're a slave to that who you're working for in order to be able to get that kind of money, as opposed to those who create dollars. They don't answer to nobody. I create the means by which you live. I don't answer to you. You answer to me. That's why I don't. That's and those type of people. I can't believe they share the same humanity that I do, or that most people do. To send thousands of people off to another country to go kill other working class, low class, just regular people, regardless for whatever reason. And let's even look at the other side, right? Suicide bombers is a thing. And I know this, I forgot which comedian. I think it was Earthquake. Talking about, he's talking about, the suicide, or the not necessarily the suicide bomber, but the main guy who's talking to the suicide bomber, saying, okay, you're going to go blow yourself up as a blase, or you're going to take this bomb somewhere. And he's saying that, okay, so I'm going to take this bomb. Now, how do I get away? So he's like, no, wait a minute. So I got to hold a second. I know I take this bomb and I'm supposed to blow it up here, but how do I get out of there? Once I drop the bomb there, where do I go? And he's like, no, you stay there. You blow up with the bomb. The balls you have, especially because it's an older person convincing a younger person. That's just one thing. I mean, I know there's a lot of misinformation, but I don't give a fuck what side we're talking about, whether it's our side, their side, just the shit that goes on. I mean, for whatever reason, the balls you have to tell somebody or to convince somebody, it's the same programming, because you have to program that person to look at that other people that they're getting ready to go blow themselves up as less than, or as this or that. And it's kind of easy with what's going on, because you have world leaders pitting people against other people, lower class people pitting them against it. So it's easy to tell a young Arab kid who's going through so much shit, and they say, hey, go blow those people up because they did it. What about the people that put it in place for that to be done? So the type of person that could affect such a affect people to go do these things. I can't say that we share the same humanity. It doesn't seem like we do. And tinfoil moment, these people have to be possessed by something other than a human spirit. I can't explain it any other way. You know, and it's funny because we say this whole alien theory, right? It's a whole thing of these aliens going to come down. Now there was a clip from a radio show, right? And it's an old radio show. I forgot. I can't remember exactly. I've actually sampled it for a song, like an intro piece for a song. Really chilling. And it comes out later. You know, they sort of debunk the premise behind it, saying that it was only for a joke, and you know, it was just a show, which I think is cover up. But what happens in this radio show is a caller comes in, or a call comes in, and the radio host picks it up, and you know, this is one of those radio programs they talk about aliens and things like that. I know they were big in 2000s and the 90s and shit like that. You know, the early days, you know, heyday of like Alex Jones and, you know, was it? I want to say Jordan Peterson, but it's Jordan Maxwell. You know, those kind of guys. It was that time frame when those guys were. Hell, I think even when this came out, I think even Bill Cooper was still alive. But so what happens is the caller calls into this radio station and he's real worried and real concerned, and you know, you hear it like he's terrified. And this could be an act. I mean, honestly, this is when they put a disclaimer that this was an act, it kind of did come off as could be an act. You know, and knowing radio shows, especially because, you know, like I talk about my premise about that, you know, that one radio show, you know, all the different things that goes on. But anyway, call comes in, and the guy's real panicked. And the whole thing he's sort of referring to is how, you know, these things are called aliens, but not really. You know, what is really happening is these things are really demonic entities. And in order to sort of get them away from the whole idea that these are demonic entities, they call them aliens. And you come up with the whole alien theory, and you have alien sort of, you know, you have a whole industry behind that. You have a whole, you know, you have books and you have movies and lectures. There's a whole lecture circuit talking about alien technologies, and you know, they have evidence because they've gone into the pyramids, and they've gone to all these different locations, and you know, did these excavations and found this, that, and the other. And what it turns out, based off of this guy's, and the tone in which he's talking is so scary. But he's breaking it down. It's like, yo, this is not. You know, these aren't aliens. These are the demons. And they're possessing not only the bodies of these leaders, or becoming or putting themselves in places of power, but they're using that to affect what's going on in the world. Now, as a disclaimer, this was all an act. As a disclaimer, Constantine is just a movie. The Exorcist is just, you know, it's just a TV series based off a really fucked up movie from the 70s. You know, Star Wars is just a fantasy movie from, you know, it's just a fantasy movie from the 70s that has gone off to be one of the biggest phenomenons ever. So all this stuff was going on. Nah, that's just your fan. That's just your mind. Turn on the news, right? Another war, another bomb. Laws in the country are being more repressive, and so you tell me. Anybody watching this, if you have any ideas, maybe I'm wrong. Tinfoil hat. So I can claim I can. I would accept that if anybody ever watching this would say, you're just talking out your ass. Maybe so. But we're all living through this shit now, so have another cup of your modernity. Salud. Now the movie's going to be the list. Constantine. Definitely. I was just watching it. I watch other YouTubers. A lot of other YouTubers like content. And one I like is one called It's Mr. Video. And he reacts to movies and stuff. And it's cool because, you get these younger guys, right? They react to a lot of stuff that, things that we grew up on. Music, movies, all kinds of stuff like that. These younger guys are getting to experience it, and they do it as content for a channel. You know what I mean? So you get to sit back and sort of watch or listen to something that you kind of grew up on. You kind of, and you get to watch them sort of see how it affects that person. So I know sometimes it's kind of weird. You're watching reaction channels. It's like, what the hell am I watching? But I don't know. It's just, with It's Mr. Video, you get to watch him sort of through him talking, basically reacting to the movie. You get to watch how his mind thinks and the things that he comes up with, and he's like, this is what I was thinking when I was watching it, and you sort of re-watch it or re-experience it. So he was watching Constantine as one of his movies, and that's why it kind of clicked in my head. That's definitely one of the movies because it goes back to something I mentioned before, which was the Exorcist TV show, which shows the whole thing about the possession of these world leaders and these high up figures that affect change in the world. So, yeah, that all that depressing shit is why. I also do mostly listen to stuff that's comedic. You know what I mean? I do listen to a lot of podcasts, and one of my favorite channels to watch is All Deaf, right? It's these cats out in California do all kinds of comedy shit, and I love watching that stuff, right? Such shit like Roast Me, shit like that. But then, there's other things. That's why I get to like a lot of the old. That's why I listen to a lot of old Opie and Anthony. It was a radio show, but it was sort of like how podcasts are now. So this was, they go back to even terrestrial radio, and it was, they go from being music jockey to actually talking. And you get two people that are basic degenerates, with a bunch of time and a bunch of money in their hands, and you competing with Howard Stern, and he was trying to be controversial. You got to sort of out controversial him. So it's a lot of funny shit funny shit. And you can listen to like whole list of their stuff. And so again, like I said, they had a lot of comics that come through, even just a lot of celebrities that they were interviewing, and a few of them have passed on, like I said. And this is Opie and Anthony radio show, and one I mentioned was you have Chris Cornell, and then you have Patrice O'Neal. Both have passed on. Both have been at least for me, sort of bigger than life monumental figures. Chris Cornell with the whole grunge alternative scene. I mean, I love Soundgarden. I'm more of a metalhead. At the time it was weird because, when grunge became a thing, you had Metallica that sort of went and did the Black Album and Load and Reload, and it was like you wanted that crunch, so I was really listening to more death metal than anything, and a lot of death metal, a lot of thrash, Pantera sort of, they took that whole heavy from Metallica because Metallica didn't want to do it no more. So you definitely had Pantera sort of filling that void. So with all these things, I mean, obviously, I'm saying, entertainment isn't basically about entertainment, but at least, you get something from it. And so, mainly the whole point of listening to these things is to laugh, and this one particular radio show, this one guy, I mean, he just sort of, I would say sort of the, it's that movie with Tom Hanks. Anyway, I just had the name. At a high moment, forgot the name of the movie. But this one guy, just based off of being this radio personality, came across so many different people, and a lot of these people have passed on, and a lot of this stuff was just sort of monumental to me. And I was just sort of mentioning, okay, with Chris Cornell, the whole grunge thing, and grunge became sort of a big thing, and Soundgarden was definitely a big band, especially for me. I love Soundgarden. Like I said, even though I was listening to a lot of super, super metal, but, it was crazy because I'm listening to, on one hand, I'm listening to Cannibal Corpse, and the next hand I'm listening to Biggie. I'm just that weird. And then you mix Nirvana. I mean, the main four I loved, Nirvana, Soundgarden. Well, I don't want to put Pearl Jam in. I like Pearl Jam, but it was primarily Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Soundgarden. Those are definitely tops for me. Anyway, but this one guy had this sort of like Forrest Gump type of life. That's the name of the movie. little bait. But yeah, this one guy, he friggin' had sort of like a Forrest Gump type of life. And it just sort of intersected with all these people. And like I said, you have, at the same time, you have both Chris Cornell and Patrice O'Neal at the same damn time. And we lose both of them. Patrice first, obviously. And I think Chris Cornell was around 2017 because during that year of the show that I'm listening to, it was something that came up. That happened. So it was, I think it was 2017 that it happened. Yeah. But so like I said, you trans forward to the future. There's no more Opie. Anthony is Opie. And like I said, he had like a revolving door of different hosts, but he had three main ones that he would have on a regular basis. Sometimes one would be out, the other ones would sometimes intersect, or it was sort of like two would be there for one show, and two of the main three, would be there for one show, and then the next show it might be another two, but the main ones was when they had all three of them. So you would have Sherrod, Vic Henley, Carl Ruiz. Then, like I said, the show ended because it got canceled, and Opie, he had his own podcast, and he had whole segments with Carl Ruiz. He passed, and it wasn't like I didn't know the guy personally, but it was a bummer because it was really fun. It was really fun listening to him on the radio, watching him on. He was a TV personality on the Food Network. He did a lot of stuff with Guy Fieri. So you can still go back and look at the old Food Network and go back and listen to it. It's just fun dude to listen to. It's just fun. Like I said, you listen to podcasts, you listen to radios, talk radio. Certain reasons why, sometimes you want to listen to sports, sometimes you want to listen to, financial news, sometimes you want to laugh. And in this case, you had somebody like these people. Then, you have Vic Henley and Sherrod left. Now, Opie didn't do much with Vic Henley and Sherrod after the show was over. Like, still haven't heard anything recently from Sherrod because he's still alive. But Vic Henley dies. And just the thought of that, it's like on one hand it's a bummer, if you're sort of Opie, it's a bummer because people no longer exist and they're no longer alive. But on the other hand too, you did get to spend that time with them, so you had that memories, and obviously life is not forever. Nothing's forever, but at least that time you spent with that person, you have that time with that person, you have those memories. And because of the internet and video technology, you can still go back, and revisit some of those literally, you know what I'm saying? So that's what we're going to do. We're going to go listen to just a segment. It's nothing as far as socially, socially, it doesn't have anything as far as, social value, basically. It's just bullshitting. And Carl Ruiz, he's he owns a restaurant. He was a restaurateur, basically, so food talk. So, just basically listen to him bullshit about food. And it starts off, it's Opie, Vic, and Carl. Then Sherrod comes in, and there was underlying theme because he would always come in late, and they had like theme music for him. I think in this case they actually cut out the theme music because this is YouTube, and the channel gets strike and shit like that. So you definitely don't want to. But I think they did take it out. So there's some weird like audio in some parts. But either way, claiming fair use. We're just listening to a little bit of it. We're not going to watch any of the visuals because it is visuals. And it's amazing, too, because for a long time since then, I was listening to it, and it was all you could do was listen to it. They didn't have the video. But one of the guys that worked on the show, he had a video camera rolling the whole time. And I guess there was some sort of a beef between him. Something happened with him and Opie on the show. He took his camera, and there's all this video footage, which is now coming to light. So there's actually videos you can go see of it, and it's not like the most visually exciting thing to see, but at least you get to see the people talking as opposed to just listening to them. But I remember when the show was going on, and this was right before the pandemic, for this season or this era of the show. I didn't have Sirius at the time, but what they would do is every day the next day they would put the previous day's show on YouTube. So I was every day waiting for that stuff. I've been sort of due to health issues, I've been not as mobile and out and about as I would like to be. So I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts, a lot of time listening to different YouTube videos for mad years. So this 1 year, man, you had this. It was just so fucking every day you looked forward to it. You get through your day, and at 5 o'clock you'd have one show. I forgot what it was. And then at 6 o'clock there would be the replay of this show. I so fucking look forward to it every day. Like you look forward to a TV program. And then one day it's just off air. And you hear all this drama that goes on, and fast forward a few years, we lose one, pandemic hits. I think we lost both before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, I was I was listening to this stuff all the time. There was a couple. There was this show. There was Freeze Love podcast, and I got some serious health shit towards the later half of the pandemic. So, recovering. I listened to a lot. I leaned on All Deaf, Freeze Love podcast, Opie and Anthony, Opie Radio. It's kind of hard to move around when you got like tubes in your chest and big health problems. But either way, I'm gonna play this segment to sort of end the podcast. Again, fair use. Only listening to a clip, not a whole show. So hopefully YouTube doesn't ding me for it, but this is part of the show. So let me see. And last time I tried to play this shit, that was when I had that issue. It was basically like buffering. So hopefully it doesn't do that now. Not buffering, but all right, here we go.
Job
Each week.
When do you work?
know.
I work all fucking day.
So that's Carl and Vic.
I don't know when he works. I've known him for years.
Let me tell you what I do. I wake up
I
at
do
6.
know you like to test out a lot of food at a lot of different joints.
Well, because
Food
just
talk.
like comedians go to other people's comedy shows, right?
Right.
Well, it's right out there.
You're
in the
paying
open.
attention to the competition.
Carl
So-
likes to wake up early,
Damn, it's doing it again.
and it's always bread involved.
Well,
I wake up every morning and I check my bread. My guy makes my bread out in Sorrento's in East Hanover. That's 45 minutes away.
Right.
I'm the only person. I think it's one of the best bakeries in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And it's one of the reasons I'm successful. I'll tell you the quick story. When I first started,
wait.
Again, get the little circle.
huh?
That's it.
I mean, for a fucking sandwich maker, I don't live in a shelter. I nailed it.
bad comedy, Carl. My fault.
So what I'm saying is, when we first opened the restaurant, bread is 50% of the sandwich. That's the cape on Superman. That's
Yeah.
the most important thing, right?
Right.
So we tested over 100 bakeries.
Damn.
Right? And we didn't test them one day. We tested them for 7 days straight because you have 3 different shifts of bakers.
Ooh.
So each baker is like a fingerprint, right?
Ah.
This pays Sorrento's.
It's doing it again.
Taught me something I never thought I was real. Most
Motherfucker.
bakeries are fucking bullshit or garbage cans. I'll tell you why. They use these ovens that are fake heat. They bake at 350, but they spray a chemical to make it look like it's like a fake crust. It's garbage.
Oh God.
So I found this place that still makes bread old school. 45 minutes away. I went and got it.
Right.
$1.20 a loaf cost me.
Okay.
The average wholesale loaf is 20 cents.
Oh man.
So I start getting busy. Now the local deli owner, he fucking waddles his way down to my fucking restaurant. Oh, fucking a real fucking Francesco
We're gonna get through this.
Rinaldi motherfucker, right? He comes down, he fucking smells like fucking olive oil, right? He fucking, hey, what's doing here, cuz? I'm like, yeah, what's up, you fat fuck? What do you want? He goes, gotta line out the door, right? Well, where you get your bread from? I say, get it from Sorrento's. Oh, get the fuck out of here. It's Sorrento's. They don't do wholesale. I said, I know. He goes, what do you pay for a loaf? I said, $1.20. He goes, I pay 28 cents. What are you, an idiot? I go, you're in my fucking deli. Who's the idiot? Go back and sell your fucking jail slop. Fucking let me do what I'm doing.
This is exactly what happened last time. But just I don't know. I'm probably gonna end this soon because it's doing this now again. I'm gonna retry it again next time, and I don't know what the fuck to do to get that to stop happening. But either way, this is Vic and Carl. These two. The one laughing is Vic, and the one talking is Carl. These are the two that I was talking about. It's like I'm sitting here looking at the video now, and I'm looking at it. It's wild, you know. Of course, I don't know the people personally, so it's not. I feel it in that sense, but it's still, you know, feel something. And then I'm looking at Opie, and he's laughing, and because he's the one directing the show, and it's like little does he know, a few years down the line, you know, that both of these guys sort of, you know, they have that montage in a commercial or like a movie or something where you have the people, and then, you know, you see like sort of like time goes by and those people sort of disappear. It's just sort of like that same kind of a feel. And in a few minutes, then you have the third person come in. He's still alive. But let's see if we can get through to him.
Why would you tell him where you're getting your bread from?
He's not going to pay $1.20.
He knows he's not going to do it.
No, I tell everybody where I get the bread. I buy all they can't make more bread. I buy 120 loaves a day.
What are they spraying on it to give it the fake crust?
Not Sorrento's is not doing that.
Right.
No.
I know that.
What they do is these new
The other place.
What they do is they spray the solution on it, and they put them in MOFOD ovens, and what it does is it creates what a high temperature oven would do. But there's only one thing this chemical can't create. So if you ever go buy bread, look for blisters on the top of the bread.
Right.
If you could pop a blister on the bread, you're eating real bread.
Okay. That's a great tip for everybody.
But that's damaged bread, obviously.
Damaged bread? What are you
Blisters
buying?
are never good.
No.
We all know that. We
Wait.
blisters on
Vic, I
anything.
swear to God, Vic, just talk
I'm with
about
you.
it.
No,
I'm taking my
I'm
fucking
with you.
headphones off, and I'm going to take a 5 minute because you've been fucking with me all weekend.
I know he has.
How?
I'm taking five.
Damn
I'm
it,
taking
man.
5.
Whoa, wait! Now we're getting into the mud. How did I fuck with you all weekend?
You're sending
We're
videos to the
pals.
Food
How
Network.
about that video? That
Please,
video.
just can you explain?
We're
Just out of my
pals.
curiosity,
Me, you, and the Food Network.
I'm just trying to figure out when you had your stroke. What are you talking about?
Slight aneurysm. Just a
When
slight
did the
aneurysm.
vessel go pop in that fucking head of yours? You said the
Damn it,
blisters
man.
on bread. Oh, I can
Blisters never good. So maybe they should
no.
name it something else. Is
If
all
there-
I'm saying.
If there ever is a town to have a good blister, it would be a bread blister.
Thank you, Vic. I'm going to talk to you, Vic, and then you're going to talk to.
I think that creates too much crumbs. It gets a little bit messy and crummy.
See,
I don't even know what to
I don't
fucking
know.
say
Right?
Grab the seat,
Finally,
right?
someone saved this
Yes,
conversation.
sir.
Reggie, how are you, buddy?
What's up,
That's
Shiro?
Carl. What's going on? Nice to meet you. Everything all right?
I'm here.
This is vexing me. I'm not even gonna play anymore. But you get the idea of, you know, what I was saying as far as, you know, you have those two guys. You had Sherrod come in. That's the one thing I was waiting for, because that was the sort of a theme for his appearances. Anytime he'd appear, he'd always come in a little bit late, and he would sort of interrupt the whole conversation. You know, doing that whole every time, you know. And then they would play like a theme music for him. It was just fun. It's just you had the interaction, you know what I mean, things they talk about. It was just talking about just bread making, you know, and they go into other subjects, but you get at least the gist of you know, just the ball breaking, and, you know, they go into a whole bunch of other stuff. I didn't want to necessarily play a whole episode or anything, just to give you an idea. I wish that they would play it better. You get the whole funny part of it, but I'm gonna try it again next time. Next week it's gonna be, you know, I got a whole different things to talk about. So I'm gonna go ahead and end this one. 2 hours and 20 minutes. I like that. That's a good amount of time, especially since I'm only doing it one time a week. Yeah, that's the best way. Anyway, you know what I'm saying? I talked a bunch of bullshit. If you like it, if you don't, I can't. There's nothing I can do about it. It was all, it's all just me talking shit. Day is long, the sun is hot. You might as well smoke if you